So obviously one of the questions that I'm hoping will get answered along with the rest of us is how much time exactly has passed, between Generation 4, Friendship is Magic, and Generation 5, a new generation, if they are in the same world and thus somewhat share the same continuity. This is a question, like I said, hopefully the series itself, if not the special following up the movie, will answer. But if we as fans, try to answer it or figure it out ourselves, like we intend to do all the time when it comes to this kind of, storytelling and all that, and wanting to know exactly how much time has passed between one interpretation in a franchise and another, should they connect within continuity. The one thing we always intend to do, and Friendship is Magic is no exemption to this, is theorize and try to guess exactly, how much time has passed, or when this happened, or how this happened, or how that came about, and when it came about. That's one thing we like to do. And a lot of us, even before the movie officially debuted today, were theorizing just by the trailers, the imagery, and all that, of how much time may or may not have passed between both generations. Well, I've talked about it before. Others have talked about it before. I've tried to theorize and guess the amount of time. Others have done the same thing. And now, because the movie has officially released, today here in the States on Netflix, as well as in North America on Netflix, and somewhat in theaters, which I'm assuming it did, as well as this past week debuting in theatrical cinemas around the world and on some streaming services as well, I've decided to kind of do an updated look and guess in theory, basically speculation, an updated speculation of how much time I believe has passed between Friendship is Magic's Generation 4 and Generation 5, a new generation. Now, we know in Friendship is Magic, it's pretty much, confirmed on screen and in episodes that 1,000 years had gone by since Celestia started ruling over Equestria. It's been 1,000 years, or 1,001 years since, she's ruled over Equestria, since she's raised the sun, stuff like that. So if we were to take that into consideration, we can pretty much consider that any historical facts that occurred in Generation 4 should, in Generation 5, still be looked at as historical truths. Basically events and moments that happened. But yet, there's the line that Hitch uses towards Sunny after getting her out of a jam that she unintentionally, caused during the Cantologic presentation of how to protect the Earth ponies from unicorns and Pegasi. And basically the one thing he told her was, as I've mentioned before, the one thing we all suspected going into this, that so much time has passed that the stories about Twilight Sparkle and her friends' adventures of saving Equestria and all that have become nothing more than foal stories. In other words, fairy tales. The kind of stories that a parent would tell their kid to tuck them into bed before they went to sleep. And, once, Hitch confirmed what we all suspected, that really started to put into question of how much time has really passed. Now, I went on Google and I asked Google how much time passes between, when historical moments and events and truth occur to when they become urban legends and myths and folklore. And basically the best they could give me was between 1,000 and 4,000 years. Now, like I said, in the show, Friendship is Magic, 1,000 years have passed since Celestia became, ruler of Equestria along with her sister, and basically since she raised the sun. So we can, and basically it's during that, acknowledgement that we realize that even in 1,000 years, all historical truths and facts that occurred, are still looked at as being, correct. In other words, they're still looked at as being true. In other words, being acknowledged that they did indeed happen. But yet, when you have Hitch here basically confirming what a lot of us pretty much felt was the possibility, then it really puts into perspective the fact that basically it puts into perspective the fact that more than 1,000 years have passed. But how much? Well, like I said, when I looked it up on Google, it gave me, one of the numbers it gave me was 4,000. Now it said 4,000 BC. So I asked Google how much time had passed between now and 4,000 BC. And it said basically 6,000. So if 6,000 years have passed between 2021 and 4,000 years ago, or 4,000 BC I should say, if 6,000 years have passed, then if we were to adjust that to Equestria time frame, we can assume that maybe, just maybe, that perhaps, this is just as an estimation. This is why I'm kind of pausing and thinking about this before I say it. This is just an estimation that perhaps nearly 5,000 years have passed. That's what we can estimate. Because basically when you think about it, sorry about that, but basically when you think about it, let's say you read the Bible. You go to church, you read the Bible, you read all these stories from Genesis to Revelation, and pretty much everything you read in there is backed up as being, things that really happened. There's no exaggeration, right? They're basically telling you the truth. And everything they talk about in those books of the Bible and in those various chapters pretty much predict to an exact T what has been going on in today's world. Now, the reason I use that is because there's a lot of people, or use that as an example I should say, it's because there is a lot of people, even today, there's a lot of people that look at those stories in the Bible from Genesis to Revelation and they don't believe any one of them. Yeah, they look at those stories in the Bible and they don't believe a single word that comes out of it. And why? Because so much time has passed between, BC, like 4,000 years BC before Christ, and even afterwards in the AD standpoint, after death, that they don't believe anything that occurred in those books, in that Bible, actually happened. They look at them as mythical. They look at them as folklore. They look at them as urban legend. In other words, they don't believe a word. Like I said, they don't believe a word. Because it's been so long. It has been so many centuries, so many years that, even though myself as a born-again Christian, my mom as a born-again Christian, Josh Scorcher as a born-again, Josh Scorcher, aka Firebrand, as a born-again Christian, even though a lot of us, believe a word in that Bible. We believe everything that the books in that Bible, talk about and know to be truthful fact. There are people that don't believe any of it, and they believe it's a bunch of phooey. They believe it's a bunch of folklore. It's a fairy tale, stuff like that, mythical urban legends. And the reason I use this as an example to, the possible tracing of how long it's been between Generation 4 and Generation 5 is because, again, going back to what, Hitch confirmed for a lot of us that speculated this being the possibility when he tells, his longtime friend that, hey, those stories your dad Argyle used to tell you were nothing more than fool stories. They were basically folklore. They were fairy tales that parents tell their kids to put them to bed. If if he is coming out and saying that what we as fans saw in Generation 4 to be, real, to be truth, to be historical in equestrian history, as basically, being not the case, being false, until he finds out the truth later on, then that kind of gives you an estimation that perhaps 5,000 years have passed between Generation 4 and 5. That's about my estimation, my speculation of how many years have passed. Because, when you look at, 4,000 years ago, which is, which has things depicted as happening in the Bible at that time frame, when you have 6,000 years passing between then and now, and even today, like I said, you have people coming out and saying, "Oh, that never really happened. How do you believe that stuff in that in that book and all that? How can you believe anything that says? That sounds like it's a bunch of hooey, it's a bunch of folklore, it's a bunch of urban legends, it's fairy tales." And you know what? Unfortunately, as much as a lot of us hate to admit it, those people have a right to that opinion. But again, I use this as an example because Sonny, in a way, represents those like us that believe everything that happened in the past as being real. She believes everything that occurred in the past, from Twilight and her friends saving Equestria, to Twilight ascending to Alicorn status, to her being the ruler of Equestria overall along with her friends. She believes everything, and I mean everything. But, like I said, going back to what Hitch pointed out, and what others have probably pointed out to her as well, even Phyllis at the beginning, when, she's confronting Argyle, when Sonny's a filly, when you take that all into consideration, you have to wonder to yourself how much time actually has indeed passed. And my estimation is this: I believe nearly like I said, I know I'm repeating myself. I know like I'm rambling and repeating myself here, but this is what happens when you do these videos and stuff unscripted. But to me, I believe nearly 5,000 years have passed. Because here's the thing, when you think about it, if only 1,000 or 2,000 years have passed, then there's no way any of the events, the historical events that occurred in Friendship is Magic would be lost. None of them would be turned into folklore or fairy tales. But yet, we have confirmation that a lot of ponies, before the truth is revealed to them, that everything that Sonny has acknowledged to have happened indeed did happen. When you have many of the ponies coming out and saying none of that's true, to me, I believe nearly 5,000 years to be the exact time frame between Generation 4 and 5. Thus, resulting in the adventures that we saw, the stories that we saw told to us in Friendship is Magic being turned into folklore, fairy tales, bedtime stories that get told to colts and fillies before they get tucked into bed. So yeah, I believe in continuity, unless I'm proven wrong when the series comes out or even the follow-up special debuts, unless I'm proven wrong in one of those scenarios, I believe my estimated, time jump between the two series, because they both take place in the same world and basically somewhat the same continuity, my estimation of a time jump between the two is 5,000 years, or nearly 5,000 years. But what do you guys think? Do you think nearly 5,000 years have passed? Do you think it's less? Or do you think it's more? How much time do you think has passed that will result in the adventures of Twilight and her friends saving Equestria and spreading the magic of friendship, becoming folklore and fairy tales? How much time do you think did pass in the world of Equestria? Let me know down below, comment if you like, live chat during the premiere, like the video. Check me out at BW Roses on Vimeo, as well as Patreon BW Roses, as well as check me out on BW Roses discussions and all your favorite audio podcast locations except for Pandora, as well as check out my Teespring store below for merchandise. And again, let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll talk to y'all later.